Listen here. If you just watched the 10-1 and now you're here, congrats, you're a patron. We really appreciate you. If you're not a patron, you're watching this on YouTube, become a patron. You'll literally be able to go back in time and watch us talk about our games from 200 to 101.
And also, right on our Patreon right now is our 200 to 300, which is out right now. And that's the one's going to stay there on Patreon. So become a patron today if you want to see that. But nonetheless, this is going to be our 200 to 101, the games that just missed the list.
Again, these are the 100 games that could never hope to be in the 100. Maybe they could. Maybe there's games we just haven't played enough yet to make it into the top 100.
Indeed.
So we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see. And some of these, who knows? On a different day, they might have made it in the top 100.
Exactly.
But we will say we are each going to be mentioning 100 games, and we're only doing one video. We're not splitting it into 10 videos like the other one. So we're going to be going fast. We're not really going to talk about these games much. We're mostly just going to mention them and move on. But we think it's cool to look this far back, and again, all the way to 200 and 300 over on Patreon, because it's just interesting. But again, we don't want this video to be 8 hours, so we're going to keep it very much moving.
You get it. The point is that these are still in the top 200 things we've ever played. So AKA, these are all really great games in our eyes.
Really great games. Any of these, I would play basically at any time.
Any day.
Mikey, let's go ahead and get right into it. What is your 200?
My number 200 is Get On Board, New York and London. This is kind of a re-implementation of Let's Make a Bus Route.
Yeah.
It's great roll and write goodness. I love it so much.
Really good. My number 200 is a hideout where you are putting on a block party, and it's kind of like a true Tetris game where you have polygonal tiles coming down from the top. It's really, really fun. It's just cool. Yeah, it's an underrated game about building a block party. It's pretty cool.
I agree. 199 is The Search for Planet X. This would be, I think, much higher for me, but you've kind of honestly hogged it a little bit to solo it, but it is such a good deduction game. This will rise up, I believe.
Yeah. My number 199 is Honga. Honga is a great game where you have this big saber-toothed kitty in the middle, and it's got this really cool action selection system that I would really, really like to see more games do. It's kind of this like quadrant action selection system. It's very, very cool. Really good game by Haba. Honga is awesome, honestly. It's 199. 198, Mikey.
198 is Don't Mess with Cthulhu. This is like a pure social deduction game. You can get in and lie with each other. There's cultists trying to bring Cthulhu forward, and there's investigators trying to find these like symbols and stuff. It's a great social deduction game that creates natural moments where you don't trust. Everyone looks suspicious. That's why it's great. It's so fun.
Yeah, one of the few social deduction games we really like. My number 198 is Libertalia, specifically the old one because I haven't played the new one, but the new one would ultimately be here.
Of course.
I really like Libertalia. This is a game where you're choosing pirate roles and stuff like that. And you're trying to get loot, but different.
A little bit of mental mind games.
Yeah, because different pirates have different orders they will go in. Really, really fun game, Libertalia. It's awesome. It's
number
197.
197 is Bonfire. It's a Stefan Feld game. I really want to show you. It's really fun. It's kind of a point salad thing set in this kind of like dwarfy, kind of almost like a Muppet world, I would imagine. World, these like little dwarf creatures and stuff. It's good. You're fulfilling contracts, doing stuff. It's got a lot of fun little combos.
I do want to try. I like Stefan Feld stuff, so I'd like to try.
It's a fun one.
197 for me is Forbidden Desert. This is kind of it's a lot like Pandemic. It's from Matt Leacock, but you are essentially trying to uncover this big flying machine that broke down in the desert. It has all the parts are everywhere, but it's got this really cool way that the sandstorm shifts around. It's a very, very unique system that really hasn't been done again. I really like Forbidden Desert a lot.
First game we ever streamed as well, which is kind of cool.
That is true, yes.
196. 196 is Detective Club. This is like, I probably should have been higher, honestly, but with the way the ranking goes, this is another social deduction game where you're using like Dixit dream cards. And again, this is another one where, because of the weirdness of the cards, everyone looks suspicious naturally. You don't have to like try to lie or anything like that. It just comes organically, which makes the social deduction way more fun to me. Really like it. Great art.
Yeah, it's really, really good. My number 186 is Lanterns, Dice, Lights in the Sky. This is the dice version of Lanterns. I really like Lanterns. I like Lanterns Dice just fine. I think it's really good. It's heavier than Lanterns, which is kind of surprising considering it's the dice version of it, the roll and write version. It's really, really good. Again, you're kind of rolling out these dice, and then you pick one of the lantern colors that's pointing towards you, and you're essentially kind of circling them on your kind of sheet right there,
puzzling,
and trying to make fireworks. It kind of takes place like right after Lanterns, which is interesting, like chronologically.
It's in the story. It's like the
directly after the festival. Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
Kind of interesting, but it's a good little roll and write game. That's my 196.
My number 195 is Altiplano. This is a game that we played for the first time right after learning Orleans for the first time. And as a result, we liked Orleans better, and I still do, I think. But Altiplano, as I've thought back on it more, I realized like I can see a lot of things that I think I would really like if I played it again. So it's kind of Risen, even though I haven't played it but the one time.
Yeah,
so
I really want to try it again.
Really want to try it again. Really bad.
My number 195 is Calico, which is kind of surprising as low as it is, but honestly, like, we kind of compare Cascadia and Calico a lot. Calico is very restrictive. It gets more restrictive as you go. Calico kind of gets more open as you go, and ultimately, I kind of want the one that gets more open as you go. I like Calico. I still think it's good, but it's my 195. I've cooled on it a pretty decent amount.
Yeah. My number 194 is Dreadful Meadows. This is a new to us game that is set in kind of like a Halloween world where there's a character who's like a pumpkin person, very kind of Jack Skellington, Halloween. And you're making candy. You're like got all your like farming candy. Really fun theme, really nice components, and it's perfect for Halloween. So I see this being kind of an evergreen Halloween October game. Worker placement stuff, really light and fun.
Yeah. My number 194 is Micro Macro Crime City. This is a game where you have a big old piece of paper with a whole bunch of like kind of Where's Waldo stuff, and you are trying to solve crimes. You will find the scene of a crime, and then you have to work your way back through this giant picture, and you will see the scene kind of portray backwards in time. It's really, really cool system. Great kind of activity more than a game, but with like families and stuff like that. It's a big piece of paper, so you can kind of bring it anywhere. I really like Micro Macro Crime City. I think it's super unique and fun.
Agreed. 193 for me is Quirky Circuits. This is a cooperative programming game where you are all collectively adding cards that are going to control a robot. The main robot that you use, the first one is a little cat riding a Roomba around, and the Roomba has specific ways that it moves, and the cards you're playing are going to try to collect all these dust bunnies, but you can't talk about what cards you're playing. You're putting them face down, and then kind of chaos ensues. It's really fun, really cute, great art, fantastic little minis. It's a fun one, so that is Quirky Circuits.
Indeed, my number 193 is actually Scythe. You would think it's probably higher than this, but like I'm just kind of cool on Scythe. Here's the thing, Scythe is one of the things, every time I play Scythe, I go, I like this. If we had played it even somewhat recently and then I did my list, it probably would have been higher. I don't think it would have made it in my top 100, but Scythe is one of those games, if I don't play it often, I kind of just like, I don't really need to play Scythe anymore. I do like it, though. It's a good game.
It's a good game.
But it's never my favorite game. That's 193.
Fair enough. 192 for me is Dune Imperium. This would probably be higher if I played it a little bit more.
For you, for sure.
But I really do enjoy the game. It blends worker placement and deck building quite well. It's not gonna be a game I ever play that much because our buddy has it and stuff, and we'll pretty much only play with him.
And I don't like it, so.
And Nick doesn't like it that much, but I do enjoy what Dune Imperium does. I think it's objectively a well put together game.
I think it's a good game. I just don't personally like it.
Yeah.
My number 192 is Isle of Cats. This is a game where you are trying to rescue cats from this island. You have these polynomial cat tiles, and you're trying to fill out your boat as much as possible. I really like Isle of Cats. I might actually like the Explore and Draw, which is like the roll and write version of Isle of Cats. I think I actually might like that one better than Isle of Cats.
Yeah, I think
but I do think Isle of Cats is great production, cool little theme, and just goes over well with a lot of different people.
My number 191 is Coimbra. A game we finally got to play. I'd wanted to play since I saw it at Dice Tower Con a long time ago.
We need to pick this one up, yeah.
We do need to pick it up. There's a lot of fun stuff with kind of bidding to be the first one to collect certain cards and stuff. There's a lot of tracks you're bumping, so it's very satisfying. That really pretty art. And the dice wear pants, and that's great.
Oh, God, you love dice pants. You love them.
So Coimbra is my 191. Would really love to explore that again.
My number 191, trying to go quick and it's going too fast, is Coloma. Not Coimbra, but Coloma. Coloma is a cool simultaneous selection game where you're trying to build up the town of Coloma, which is cool because we actually grew up right next to Coloma. And it's kind of this old west town, and you are doing a simultaneous selection. And it's a good simultaneous selection where if you go to the same spot as someone else, you're not just like screwed, like, oh, nothing happens. You just don't get the better version of it. If you go there alone, you're going to get the boom action, which is like the better version. If you go there with someone, you'll kind of just get the basic version. Yeah. And it's a Wild West game. You're like trying to put out these tents everywhere and trying to fight all these bandits and stuff. It's really, really fun. And it has a dummy player and two-player that actually works pretty good, which is pretty rare, actually.
Yeah, the dummy is not bad.
Coloma's number 191.
Nice. My number 190 is Explorers. This is a game that probably if we played a little more would be a little higher. This is a Phil Walker Harding Prize Bay game where you are selecting these tiles that will give you a landscape. You're going to cross off 2 or 3 X's within that landscape. It's got kind of some DNA with cartographers, and you're trying to get to certain locations on the map to trigger various scorings and collecting stuff. But it's really fun. There's a lot of variety in the types of things with that game. So pick it up if you're ever interested because it's a good value for what you get, and it's a nice little game.
My number 190 is kind of a testament of like sometimes we do these lists, games end up lower than they honestly should be because my number 190 is Paladins of the West Kingdom. I don't think it would be in my
Yeah,
top
I was
100.
surprised by
but
that.
it should be higher than this. I really like Paladins of the West Kingdom. I definitely like. It's my least favorite of the 3 West Kingdom games for sure. But it shouldn't be 190. I like Paladins a lot. It's just the heaviest, and usually I'm kind of like I'd rather just play Viscounts or Architects. But it honestly shouldn't be 190.
I dig. My number 189 is Fire Abend, or Finishing Time in English. It's a Friedman Freeze game. All about like using your time outside of work to gain as much relaxation as possible before you inevitably go back to work, which gives you a bunch of stress and removes your relaxation. So it's all about getting your working conditions better and using the time you have
it's one
outside
of the coolest
work.
themes ever.
It's a cool, because it basically shows the perils of like working. It's a strike to get better working conditions and stuff. It's a really cool theme. It's all about like suck it, stick it to the man. I really appreciate it. It's fun worker placement stuff. It's actually pretty light too.
It's quite, it is. It's just nice. My number 199, I'm also surprised it's kind of this low, and this is The Loop, because I really like The Loop a lot. This is a game, a cooperative game where you're kind of going back through time, just trying to stop Dr. Foe, and he's putting out clones at all different times, and you have to go to those times and try and kill them essentially, and do these objectives. It's really, really hard, but I actually really, really like The Loop a lot. I'm surprised it's a little slow. Again, sometimes in these lists, things end up lower, but I really, really like The Loop.
I enjoy The Loop. I do think it's too hard, or it doesn't scale very well at lower player counts.
I enjoy it more than you for sure. That's 189.
188 is Coal Baron. This is a really fantastic game about, again, the sexy industrial revolution before we knew pollution existed. You're going down and you're creating like a little mine shaft, and you're mining out different tiles, which will have different types of coal, bringing that coal up to the surface to essentially kind of like fulfill contracts and load them onto carts and trains and stuff. There's kind of a bunch of different like kind of set collection majority elements about the types of coal you've done, the types of transportation you've used.
It's cool.
It's a really fun game. The whole like extracting the coal is interesting. And it has kind of this progressive worker placement stuff to it. It's really good.
My number 188 is number 9. This is a stacking game. You're stacking these number tiles, which are kind of polygonal tile shapes.
Way too low.
And you're trying to, you do like this game more than I do. I do like number 9, and you're trying to stack these numbers as high as you possibly can, but normal stacking rules, they can't overhang. You have to be on at least 2 different tiles when you play. The higher you can stack these numbers, the more they'll be worth. Really, really fun game that just is weird, but just works really well. That's 188.
My 187, you just mentioned, is the Isle of Cats. It's really fun. I think I'm in the same boat of like, if I'm going to play this game, I'm probably going to solo it, but I also would probably just rather play the Explore and Draw, because I like what you're doing, but the Isle of Cats kind of has a little more stuff to set up and card drafting, which is not bad at all. It just sort of does a little more than what you should do, which is just putting cats on the boat.
Totally.
So that's my number 187.
All right, my number 187 is the Castles of Tuscany, which is kind of like a spiritual successor of the Castles of Burgundy. You're kind of doing similar things, but it's kind of Ticket to Ride style, where you're getting these cards and then turning them in. And it's just, it works really, really well. It's very, very smooth. It's lighter than Castles of Burgundy.
Significantly,
And it's one of those games that, like, every time we play it, I'm like, oh, that's right, Castles of Tuscany is really, really good. But I kind of forget until we play it again. But I always like Castles of Tuscany quite a bit.
Nice. My number 186 is Tabanusi, The Builders of Earth. It's another tea game from Board Game Geek.
I need to play this one again. This
one would be higher if we just had a chance to play it, because it's kind of obtuse. It's heavier.
I did like it.
It's really fun. It's really tight resources and stuff, but it's got some really interesting things with the dice you're drafting and stuff like that. It just needs to be played more, because we played a couple times. I tried to solo, which was a disaster. I do not recommend soloing this. But I enjoyed it, and it could go higher, but that's Tabanusi.
186 for me is Photosynthesis. This is a game where it's an area control game where you are trees, trying to control the forest with trees.
You are the energy of the forest.
And you are collecting sunlight based off how big your tree is. You'll collect more sunlight. You also cast shadows on other people. It's a very interesting way to do kind of area control.
Yeah, the way
you're building up these trees and then kind of cutting them down, having them die to get points and stuff. It's very, very unique. Very, very cool. Ultimately, relatively simple game with basically the best player board ever. And big 3D trees. Amazing. It's awesome.
It's awesome. My number 185 is Dungeon Pets. I'm a little surprised. I've definitely cooled on this game.
For sure.
I really enjoy it, but it's like, at this point, we've played it a lot over the years. I think I'm just sort of like, have played most of the Dungeon Pets in my life I need to play.
That's fair.
But when we do eventually come around to it and play it again, I always enjoy myself. So that's 185.
Yeah, it's fun. My number 185 is Small World. This is a game that we've had for a long time. We never, ever play it.
No.
But I love the idea. You take a faction like dwarves and then some kind of ability like flying, and now you got flying dwarves. And then you're basically just doing pure area control that scales really, really well. I just think it's a classic. It's really, really good. We never, ever play it. But here's the thing. Every single time we cull stuff, it sticks around.
We just did a big cull. The video hasn't come out, but guess what? It survived again.
It survived again. So we're like, should we get rid of it? We're like, nah, let's keep it. And so Small World's still around. I really like it. It's 185.
Nice. 184 is Oceans. This again probably should be higher a little bit. It's a really fun successor to Evolution.
True, I've always liked the Evolution games more than
you have.
Yeah,
I don't like them as much as you, but I don't hate them by any means. But Oceans sets adaptations on sea creatures, and you're trying to eat as much food as you can and kind of really work the symbiosis between all the different species around to kind of keep your population going. It's really fun, beautiful art as always. That's Oceans.
My number 184 is Illusion. This is a little Wolfgang Kramer, not Wolfgang Kramer, Wolfgang Warsch game.
Yeah.
And you have these cards that have different colors on them, and essentially you're trying to put them in a timeline style to say, this card has more yellow than this card. And then you basically are trying to put them in order, and then somebody thinks you did something wrong, they can essentially call you out. You flip them over to C. Very, very simple game that you can break out anywhere, any place, and it works really, really well. Illusion's really fun.
183 for me is Dice Miner. Really fun filler game. Man, it's just you're collecting dice from this little mountain that you build. And there's different colors of dice that function differently and stuff. It's super light and easy to explain. And just kind of really fun, despite it kind of being random luck and everything and swingy.
Doesn't matter.
It's a great game for a filler game, especially a 2-player. I really like it a lot.
Bonkers,
That's Dice Miner.
Number 183 is Miyabi. This is a cohesive game. This is a game where it's like, this is a game that's really, really restrictive, but in a good way. You have these polyomino tiles, and you're trying to build out a kind of a garden, like kind of
kind of beautiful,
beautiful Zen garden
ornate,
kind of thing. And you're trying to put certain, you have to put certain attributes of it in certain rows and columns and stuff. And it's very, very difficult, but really, really fun. Miyabi's a good, again, Haba, like Honga I talked about earlier, they're kind of like family weight games, tend to be very, very good, but kind of go completely under the radar.
Yeah, I just
Miyabi was another one like that. It's really fun though.
It's a solid game. My number 182 is Village. This is a game by the Brands. And it's a really fantastic worker placement going around game where you have a family of workers, and as the game kind of progresses, family members will die. And you kind of can place them to rest in different areas, and it's all about kind of like the legacy your family leaves. So there's a bunch of kind of fun, like really typical Euro stuff set in kind of like a pastoral town, like everything you'd expect. It's really fun. Solid, if not boring.
Yeah. My number 182 is QE. This is a bidding game where you are trying to get different kinds of industry into your country, essentially, like housing or agriculture or something like that. And you are bidding on these things, but you can bid literally anything. You can start with $1.
Just print money.
You can be like, I'm going to bid $10 trillion. And you can bid whatever you want, and you're trying to win these things, but the bidding gets so insane, and it's very, very fun. I really like QE. It has that, but QE has that thing where if you spend the most money at the end of the game, you're out automatically. Very, very good game, QE.
My 181 is Marble Champions. I play with my buddy Jimmy, who was literally just here a couple minutes ago. It's really fun to explore. I enjoy it because I have someone who can like knows all the nuance of the rules.
Hold your hand a little bit through it,
and hold my hand through it, but I get to just do the fun stuff. I can see how people get absolutely sucked into this game big time. I've really enjoyed the times I've played it, and I have someone who kind of buys all the stuff, so I don't have to buy any of it. It's fantastic.
Indeed. My number 181 is Nagaraja. This is a 2-player Brunakatala game where you kind of have these multi-use cards. You can use them to get these sticks, which are essentially just D4s that you're rolling out. They'll have like pips on them, which allow you to kind of get action points. And you're essentially trying to find treasure in this temple, and it's got this really just interesting way about it that it just feels very unique, and it's just very cool. And again, a game that kind of came out and went completely under the radar, but ultimately was very, very fun and interesting. Yeah,
I agree. My number 180 is Potion Explosion. Potion Explosion.
Indeed.
This is a great game that has fantastic toy value. You have all these marbles in these trays, and when you pull one out, they clank together. The same colors clank together. They explode. You get to collect more and more stuff. You're creating potions. All have powers. It's honestly a super duper fun game. It's got a great app as well.
Yeah.
I truly love Potion Explosion. So fun.
My number 180 is Planted, a game of nature and nurture. This is a new Praise B game.
Fail.
This is Praise B's doing. He did this with Summer Camp, which is kind of an intro to deck building game. This is kind of an intro to drafting game where you are getting house plants.
Other than the other one he created, Sushi Go, but you get it.
Indeed. But this one's even simpler, and you're getting these house plants, and you are trying to get resources for those house plants, like water or like nature food, and you're essentially trying to grow them in your house. You can only have a certain amount throughout the game. It's a very cute little drafting game that I liked a lot. I thought it was cool.
It's really cute, really pretty.
I think it won't stick around for too long in our collection, but I will always support it. Praise be.
It's enjoy. 179 is Claim, 2-player trick-taking game. It's much higher for Nick.
Yes.
I don't dislike it at all. I think it's really fun.
I like it more than you for sure.
These different factions, essentially, that all function differently. You can mix and match with other sets of Claim and the various expansions that have come out. But it's great 2-player trick-taking where the whole first half of the game sets up the second half, and the second half is the only half that really matters.
Yeah.
You want to have majorities of all the factions.
Really good. My number 179 is Monumental, which was in your top 100.
Yeah.
After hearing you talk about it, made me want to play it again so badly.
Pretty good.
This is this ultimately deck building game where you're putting out a grid of like 9 cards, and you are going to activate a row of cards, a row and a column. You'll activate those cards, you'll do stuff. It's got some area control stuff, but it's also like just has production to the stars for some reason, like really good minis.
Bananas.
It's bonkers, but it's a really good deck building game that just has, for some reason, a crazy production, but it's really fun.
Yeah.
And once you started talking about it, you were waxing poetic about it, and I was like, man, I want to play a Monumental so freaking bad.
too.
We don't have it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's 179.
My 178 is Ticket to Ride, or Ticket to Ride Nordic Countries specifically. Love Ticket to Ride so much. They're classic games. That's one that'll never go away for us. It's just too good. And I love the Christmassy vibe of Nordic Countries specifically.
Yeah. My number 178 is Mint Delivery. This is one of the Mint games. Started with Mint Work, Mint Deliveries. There's like Mint Co-op and Mint Area Control. There's a whole bunch of Mint games.
So many.
Mint Delivery is a little pick 'em and deliver game where you are picking up mints around this little town. You're dropping them off other places. It's a great little... The kind of Mint games are great intros to these kinds of concepts, and I think it's a great little pick and deliver game that's good to introduce that concept to people. And it's a little Mint tin, so you can just carry it in your pocket. It's a great little game.
Yeah. My number 177 is Fireball Island, The Curse of Volcar. This one we haven't played in a while, so I think it's kind of lower down, but honestly, this game is so fun. It's just silly. You're flicking marbles. I mean, they absolutely kept the heart of the original Fireball Island and still made it about flicking marbles and knocking things over. It's got this big 3D board. Super fun from Restoration Games, sponsored Deity. Love it. I just love how silly it is.
Yeah. My 177 is Petrichor, which I think has one of the coolest themes ever because you are clouds.
You are weather.
You are weather. And you are essentially have a different colors of raindrops, and you are raining down onto the board, and the board is a mix of tiles of different kinds of plants. You are trying to put water on them so that they will grow to score you points. And you want to have area control, more of your water drops on it than Mike's water drops, and then you can just score that potato plant or whatever. Really interesting game that we never play enough, honestly, but it's such an interesting concept. I really like Petrichor.
Great production, too.
Great
really
production.
Cool. Really
and just, what a cool dang theme. I like Petrichor lots. 177.
176 is Codenames Duet, or Duet. This is a fantastic, all the Codenames games are fun. A fantastic kind of word association. I'll give a one-word clue and say, hey, 3 of the words of this grid of 25 pertain to the clue I gave. Duet makes it a 2-player, specifically cooperative game. It's just really fun to play, especially with someone like him who we have these inside jokes with.
We sure do.
Great game.
My number 176 is Champions of Midgard,
Yeah,
which
that's
probably
a
would be
classic.
higher if we just haven't played it in a long time at this point.
Yeah.
But this is kind of like a really good fusion between like a worker placement Euro game, kind of a Ameritrash game where you're rolling dice, fighting all these big monsters. It's really particularly good with the Valhalla expansion.
Yep.
Which kind of gives you a reason because your workers, well, your warriors will die, but now you get to do stuff in Valhalla, which is cool.
Yeah.
Champions of Midgard is really, really good. We just don't play it very often. We ended up calling it a couple years ago.
It's
it's a good game though. Yeah.
My number 175 is So Clover. This is a cooperative clue-giving game where you're going to assemble this 4-leaf clover. On each of the 4 leaves of the clover, writing a word that pertains to the 2 words that are pointing toward it. You have to then deassemble your clover and have people reassemble it correctly. It's just a really cool idea for kind of like a clue-giving game. That works well with the production value of the clovers. Is really nice.
Yeah, it's really nice. My number 175 is Hero Realms, which is essentially the fantasy version of Star Realms. Star Realms is also great. I like Hero Realms more because I'm more of a fantasy person than a sci-fi person. But Star Realms and Fantasy Realms have a great thing. It's a deck builder game, 2-player, head-to-head. But the cool thing is you get right into being awesome. A lot of deck builds, you start off with a very basic deck. Halfway through the game, you start getting some really cool stuff going. By the end, you're awesome. Hero Realms, Star Realms, you start off immediately being able to buy like super huge broken cards. It's really, really fun.
It's epic.
We still have the co-op expansion. Still haven't played it. We need to dang play it.
I don't know what's wrong with us or why we haven't done it.
Hero Realms is great though. That's my 175.
My 174 is Micro Macro Crime City. As Nick described earlier, you have this giant Where's Waldo map full of murder and mayhem, and you're trying to piece together what happened here. It's really fun activity. Yeah, it's so fun to put together. It's really good once in a while game.
Yeah, it's really good. 174 for me is Trails. This is kind of the sequel to Parks.
Yeah.
But instead of doing stuff in Parks, you're just walking up and down this trail. On the trail, you'll be getting resources. At the end of the two ends of the trail, they're essentially merit badges that you will turn these resources in for. They'll be worth points. And you're kind of going back and forth, and as the game progresses, the trailheads will turn to their night side and get stronger.
Ramps
just a little
up nicely.
resource gathering management game. It's really, really fun.
My 173 is Fleet, the dice game. This was once upon a time way up there for me.
We need to play this again because it's been a while.
It's been a hot minute, and I think it might be nice to play again. I think for us, like, this game is combo-tastic. It's very satisfying to play. Was that?
It's static. It never changes.
It's static. It never changes.
Yeah.
And so it's like we kind of have played out the combos and stuff. And some things are bad, but because nothing changes, it's fallen down. But it's still a really fun, heavy combos, a little bit heavier roll and write game based on Fleet. It's still really great.
It's still really good. But number 173 is Clank. Probably should be higher than this, honestly. I really like Clank still. This is a deck building game with a board where you are delving down into a dungeon and you are trying to steal treasure, but there's a big old dragon down there. Because while you're going down there, you're making noise and the dragon gets angry and tries to eat you. It's really, really fun. I like Clank a lot.
My 172 is the networks. This is all about running your own TV network and slotting in shows, adding actors and things. And there's this great progression of like from season to season, a show may like become more popular or start to become less popular. So it's all about choosing like, when do I cancel the show and move on to the next thing? Because I only have 3 time slots. Really unique game. Really fun.
Under 172 is a Vladimir Sukin game called Underwater Cities that Mike likes a lot more than I do. It was like in your top 20 or so. Mike likes it a lot. Underwater Cities is really fun. This is a game where you are building underwater cities and you are kind of playing out cards, kind of like Terraforming Mars in a way, but it's got this really cool situation where there are certain actions you can do and cards that pertain to those actions, but the really strong actions have really weak cards and the really weak actions have really strong cards. So there's kind of this pull and give of like, do I want to do the really strong action or do I want to play this really strong card? Really fun game that I don't like as much as I feel like I should.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Happens. My 171 is Crystal Palace. It's all about preparing for a World's Fair, which is a theme we really, really love. I don't know why this is kind of ranked as low as it is. It's not low, I shouldn't say that. No. But like,
cool on it,
there's just a couple aspects of the game that I just don't like care so much about, like the sort of bidding for the dice you want to do. I think it's a little more important in a higher player count game, which we don't play, but it is an interesting game. You're making prototypes and just getting ready for a World's Fair and trying to make your country as sort of like famous as possible. Yeah. It's got a lot of interesting stuff to it.
Yeah. My number 171 is Russian Railroads, which I always thought was like a big train game. It's not. It's kind of an engine building.
It's a super engine builder.
Yeah, super engine building game that's really, really fun where you're kind of building out these different train tracks and you can put different essentially level of tracks on them. It's a really, really fun game. There's Ultimate Railroads, which is like all the expansions, which I'm sure eventually we'll get.
Just expensive.
It's really expensive. I kind of wish we could just get the base game, but they don't just sell the base game more. Russian Railroads is a cool game, though.
170 for me is Dead Reckoning. This is by John D. Clare. Big kind of swashbuckling pirate game that I enjoy because it's just this like huge production with all sorts of pretty stuff and really cool Ian O'Toole art, really cool art. With this kind of deck crafting where your deck never gets bigger, but you can like add these like transparent sleeves to your cards that will mitigate how, modify your cards and stuff like that.
Cool combat system too.
Cool combat system, just doing kind of piratey stuff and sailing the seas.
My number 170 is Herbaceous. This is a game where you are collecting herbs, and you'll basically, very, very simple game where you are going to collect an herb. You'll get one herb, you can put that in the public garden or your private garden. The other card you get has to go in the other garden. And you're essentially trying to pot different kinds. Some pots want all the same herbs, some want all different, some want pairs. Really, really fun game's got a lot of tension in it and great Beth Silva art. Wonderful. 169
is Dragon Castle. This is a beautiful game where you are kind of very much inspired by Mahjong, where you're collecting these tiles from this stacked kind of crumbling castle in the middle. And you're adding them to your player board, trying to make big groups, as big a groups as possible of the same color and connecting them at the right time so they all flip face down. You kind of build up from there. Really simple, really elegant and beautiful. It's just a little fiddly. Yeah. So I kind of prefer to play it, and they have a really nice app, and I'd happily play it there versus physically anymore.
They're so chunky.
I know. That's why we keep it around. It's so chunkle.
169 is a very silly game called Valley of the Vikings. It's essentially kind of a bowling game, essentially. You are Vikings who are bowling, and you're smacking this ball, and they're hitting over these barrels, and then all of the Vikings are on this big dock, and you're going down the dock, and you're trying to throw each other off the dock. It's a kid's game, but it's actually really, really fun.
Ridiculously
I cannot
fun.
wait till like Logan in many years from now, but we'll be old enough to play this game because I think it's a really great hobby game. It's absolutely outstanding.
I completely agree. My number 168 is Herbaceous. You just talked about it.
I know.
Great kind of push your luck with the card drafting. You choose something for your private garden and the community garden, or vice versa.
It's good.
Beautiful art, as you said.
My number 168 is Dragon Castle. We almost had. Are we gonna have
so
the true crossovers? I
close.
doubt it. Very close. Dragon Castle is great. I still like it because the pieces are so chunky.
They're
It's so
just
nice, but it's a
very
little
satisfying.
fiddly. But man, it's good.
Not that bad.
Yeah.
My number 167 is The Quest for El Dorado. This is a racing game, simple deck building game where you are using your cards to traverse through jungles and towns and things like that and trying to get to El Dorado first. It's just a really fun game that always becomes a tight race.
Yeah.
And the deck building elements are kind of simple, so it's a great way to introduce that mechanism.
Yeah. My 167 is Mandala Stone. This was a game that I really thought would like rival Azul in terms of like a very pretty abstract game where you're grabbing Mandala Stones of the same symbol on them and putting them in these different scoring areas, but this areas score all differently, and it's this really kind of tough management game that really works well, but it seems like it just kind of went under the radar, which is unfortunate.
It's just kind of, you forget about it a little bit, but it is a solid game and very pretty indeed.
Very good, yeah.
My number 166 is Maracaibo. I played through it solo just to get through the story and see what all it is and stuff. It's the card play and stuff is so
Super cool.
good in this game. I really, really enjoy what they're doing. I really don't love the colonial aspects of it, but the expansion is the Uprising expansion where all these, islands where people are like, yeah, we are native here. Can you go away, please? And you start rising up. So I really want to try the expansion.
The game is
but a
really
lot of stuff
fun.
of what's going on in Maracaibo is really top notch from a purely mechanical standpoint.
My number 166 is Seasons. This is a game where you are, it's a card drafting where you're drafting out these cards in the beginning of the game, and then you're rolling out these element dice, which gets you the 4 elements, and you're using those to put in these cards, which will do a whole bunch of different stuff. Really, really good game with some thick, dumb chunk dice.
Oh, yeah.
So good. It's a really good game that every time we play it, we're like, God, this game is good. It's amazing. Seasons is awesome.
Never gets less cool. Number 165 for me is QE, which you mentioned earlier. It's just so fun to have no limits on what you can spend, except for if you spend too much, you're knocked out of the game. The commodities expansion
We always lose.
really gives some more to it. I think that will maybe beef up the experience of this game, but it's just such a fun, simple bidding game.
And honestly, bid crazy. Don't bid.
Don't
bid
play for
normally.
nickels when you can literally print as much cash as you want.
Bid crazy. That's the point of the game.
Yeah.
My number 165 is Karuba, another Haba family game. A lot in this in this area here. This is a game where you will flip over a tile and everyone has the same tiles, and you'll say everyone put in tile 16, and you're trying to get your explorers to these different temples of the same color. And you are just building out your paths to there, but everyone has to put the same tiles in at the same time. But of course, like any of these games, you end up making wildly different ways of going about stuff. Very, very fun. That again, it's one of those few games like number 9 where if people have a copy, you can play with infinite amount of people because you're all going off the same thing.
Kind of a roll and write before roll and writes.
Kind of, yeah. Group was really good.
My number 164 is Endless Winter Paleo Americans. It's a fun game. I worry about its sort of staying power, like how much you can explore. That could just be me. There's all these modules to it, but you're kind of like early man, and you're using these worker placement spots to get new cards that are powerful, have these one-off abilities. You're doing some area control. You're kind of getting these big boons from these like monuments you're building and stuff like that. There's a bunch of modules that add stuff. Honestly, the thing that trips me up is there's only 4 worker placement spots.
Yeah,
and
it's weird.
I know it's like you don't need more, but I just like feel like there's not enough or something.
Yeah.
I don't know why I have that feeling. It's not bad at all. It's
that, though.
Beautiful production, 100%, and I do want to play some of those modules to see how it changes things up.
Yeah, my number 164 is Pulsar 2849. This is a game that was on our shelf of shame, the longest of any other game we ever had.
Finally played it.
Finally got a chance to play it because we love Vladimir Suki games. Yet for some reason we hadn't played this one. Kind of intimidated by it for whatever reason. Yeah. But this is this big game that's kind of like Vladimir Suki, where there's so many different ways to play,
synergies and combos,
and you're like exploring out in space, and you're getting all these resources. It's bonkers. I really, really like it though. Pulsar, it's one of those games we've only played it like once or twice at this point. I think as we play it more, kind of like a lot of Vladimir Suki games, it'll just climb up and up and up.
I could absolutely see that.
Yeah.
163 for me is Charterstone. This is a legacy game that Stonemaier put out.
I still never played this one.
Honestly, I really liked it. I played it with my Ventura gaming group early in the days of COVID. We played it the digital app, which worked really well. And honestly, having something to do was really great. I'm still not convinced that competitive legacy games work. You can kind of end up in this runaway leader, and then you have like 12 more games to play. So I don't love that. However, with the app, it made it nice and easy. I can play against bots and stuff. And I loved opening up the little crates and getting specific worker placement spots in my area. It was a really fun time.
Yeah, it seems cool. My number 163 is Turing Machine. This is a cool deduction game that I would prefer to play solo.
Cool game.
Mike loves Turing Machine. This is a game where you're trying to find a sequence of 3 numbers, like 5, 4, 3, or 1,
5, 4, 3.
4, 2, or something like that, between 1 and 5. And you were trying to find, you're asking this analog computer, hey, is the yellow number, even or odd? And then you will ask it that depending on what's in your sequence, and you're trying to find this sequence of numbers. And it sounds weird. Watch Mike's video on it. It's really weird, but it works really well. It's outstanding.
My 162 is Overboss. This is a game where you are trying to put together the most kind of deadly land possible and put the most like monstrous tokens on top of it. Yeah. So the landscape tiles want to be next to certain other landscape tiles or work in a certain way. You want to get your little tokens to be matching spots. It's very much like Cascadia, rather, where you're going to draft a paired set of a tile and a token. Yeah. This game is fun. It has honestly way too much setup, and it's a very fast game. The game will be shorter than the setup and takedown time.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's the only thing holding it back. Where like I enjoy what I do, but it's too much work to get going. Yeah. So I don't know how long it'll stick around for us, but it is a fun game. Uses kind of like old school graphics and stuff.
Yeah, it's really 8-bit graphics.
Cool game, really cool game.
162 for me, I think will be higher as we play it more. And this is Twilight Inscription, the big old roll and ride version of Twilight Imperium. I was blown away at how much I liked this game. I sold this game. My flight got canceled, so I had like 12 hours to kill. Went out to a game store, bought it, and then started playing it. And man, oh man, did I really like it. Then I taught Mike it while we were at Gen Con. No, we were at the World Series of Board Game.
Yeah.
And Mike was like, wow, this is really fun. We played it a couple more times. I really like it. It's a big old roll and ride, but I think it works really, really well. It's not too complicated. I really like Twilight Inscription a lot.
Very nice. My number 161 is Wits and Wagers. This game just works. It's a trivia game where you don't have to know the answers to trivia. They're all going to be number-based, and they're all going to be things that no one is going to know the specific answer to, most likely. So instead, you're all going to make your best guess. And we're all going to lay them out from low to high, and the best, you can bet on whichever answer you want, and the correct answer will be closest without going over, like Price is Right. It's super fun. You're getting to bet your money and stuff. Love it.
Yeah, really good. 161 for me is Clask. It's essentially kind of like tabletop air hockey. It's really great. And you have these little magnetic sticks that go on the thing, and you're smacking this ball and trying to get it in the opponent's goal. It's incredible. It's the greatest game ever made.
It's super fun. Number 160 is Remember Our Trip. This is a Sashi and Sashi game. Might be one of the most unique games ever made.
Yes.
It's all about trying to remember a trip you had, and you are placing out these tokens into different specific arrangements that you're given. And based on that, if you get the same things together, like 3 hotel things in a row, you get to then remember that a hotel was there. And the cool thing is there's a central board where if I'm the first one to confirm that there was a hotel here, that becomes reality. And then now you want to try to make sure it matches the collected memory. It's really weird.
So weird.
It's a tough spatial puzzle game. Really fun.
Really. One of the most unique games.
So interesting.
If not the most unique game ever. It's incredible.
Yeah.
My number 160 is Tiny Towns. This is a game kind of like Calico where I've cooled on a little bit because it's just so brutal where you are getting these different resources and putting them in your town.
It can
hurt. You're trying to make different patterns of these resources. If you do, you get to then put a building of that type that makes that in there, and these buildings will all score in different ways. One thing that's cool about this is it kind of does the thing where like there's these big old chunky building pieces, but there's like 5 different abilities for that building. So you just switch that out each time, and it really makes a very diverse game that I do like a lot, but we just don't really play very often because it's just really tough.
Yeah.
And I do like it, but we just don't pull it out very often, but it's a very cool game ultimately, Tiny Towns.
I agree. 159 for me is Fox in the Forest or Fox in the Forest Duet, another 2-player trick-taking game. Fox in the Forest Duet is the cooperative version of this game. It's really fun, really kind of tricky trick-taking where all the odd number cards and 3 suits have powers associated with them. These games are really interesting and fun. I just find that the 2-player trick-taking games aren't going to get pulled out as much, but it's a really solid one, and both versions can fit into one box, which is fantastic.
It is very, very cool. My number 159 is Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, just the shortest name ever.
It takes longer to say the game than to play the game.
This is a mix between two cities and the castles of Mad King. Literally a really weird combo that works really well. Where you're going to be building a weird castle here, and you're working with your neighbors here. And then basically you're trying to make the best castle possible. So the one thing that's nice about this game is you're not trying to like tank your opponent.
No.
You want to, because you're going to score your better castle. So you're actually really trying to score the best castle you possibly can, which I think is really fun. And I just think the Castle of Mad Kid Ludwig theme works really well on top of this. It just works really well. It's very fun.
158 for me is Wreck Raiders. This is a really fun game where you're like diving down and getting treasure and stuff. It's pretty light. Some kind of set collection elements and stuff. And there's this fun thing of like you're collecting these tiles and adding and trying to kind of put them on display, which is sort of completing contracts and things like that. But it's got a great theme, really cute art and stuff like that. That's kind of accessible and does some really fun things.
Yeah. My number 158 is Mechs vs. Minions. This is a big old game by Riot Games.
I gotta play this again, man.
It's really fun. This is a co-op programming game where you are doing some kind of mission, depending on whatever mission you're doing. You could be trying to kill a whole bunch of stuff, trying to like move this bomb over here, trying to protect something, but you are programming your movements out and stuff like that, and then trying to attack all these minions that are coming around. Really, really fun game that it works really well, and the production is bonkers.
Yeah, my 157 is Burn Cycle, Nick.
I like it a lot.
It's a game that Nick has been really loving soloing, and I've gotten to play it with you a couple times. It's all about like robots who are kind of being suppressed by humans and things, even though humans created them and all that, and you're trying to pull heists against these corporations. So it's not like a vengeful game trying to kill everybody. You are trying to stick it to the man, but you're trying to do it through stealth and stuff, which is a really interesting way to do it. Obviously, it's chip theory, so it's fantastic production value. And this is kind of big old game, but I love that it's not just a guns a-blazing game.
No, it's not. Mike, what do you like to do?
Bump tracks, baby.
My number 147 is Korra Rise of an Empire, where there's like 6 tracks, and literally all you're doing in the game is bumping tracks, really.
It's delicious.
You are putting out these kind of like civilization cards, and you're going around and fighting and doing this kind of stuff, but really what it all comes down to is you're just bumping all these tracks. It's bumping tracks goodness.
Oh, yeah. 156 for me is Tekenu, Obelisk of the Sun. This is another big T game from Board and Dice.
Yep.
I really enjoy this game. I'm curious to try the expansion. This one is crunchy.
It's too hard for me.
This one is really tight resources. It's really crunchy. Yeah, man, you only have so many turns, so I don't think it'll ever ascend to the highest ranks for me because I'm like, man, it hurts my brain.
Yeah, I don't really like it because it's too hard for me.
I enjoy it when I play it, but yeah, it's heavy.
Number 156, Mike already talked about this is Don't Mess Cthulhu. It's one of the few social deduction games we really like, where again, everyone always kind of looks suspicious. Really, really fun game that I absolutely adore.
155 for me is That's Pretty Clever or Gone Clever. The whole Clever series I really enjoy. I play over and over and over on my phone. Gone Clever, the first one's my favorite. It's just combo-y goodness and stuff, but I'll just like zone out and be like dice. It's a roll and write with no theme. It doesn't need no theme. It's just combos, baby.
156 is I'm sorry, one number 195 is Draftosaurus. This is a
195, but this cool. You go.
155. Sorry, I'm all over the place.
We're lost.
Is Draftosaurus is a dinosaur drafting game. You have a little dinosaur park you can be making out. You have dinosaurs in your hand, and you're just drafting them. It's a really good introduction to drafting, and different parts of the park want different things. This little pen wants dinosaurs of the same type. This one wants dinosaurs of different type.
Simple
this
stuff.
One wants couples. This one wants to be alone, and you're just drafting them out. It's really good. You can teach the game and play it in 15 minutes. Outstanding game.
My number, where'd you go? 154 is Iguazu. This is, again, a Haba game in the kind of more family line. It's got some really cool stuff. It's sort of fiddly to set up and whatnot, but you're sort of moving this giant monster across a waterfall, and as they cover up the water and block the water, it reveals these gemstones behind it, and you're playing these cards, which are divers going to collect these gemstones. There's a lot of really interesting stuff. For whatever reason, my wife is insanely good at this game and just will unmake you. She just understands how to propel the game.
She really does.
It's a really fun game, again, in those kind of family weight hobby games that get forgotten about, but it's really solid. It's another good one.
My number 154 is the Manhattan Project Energy Empire. This is kind of the sequel to Manhattan Project. Really fun game where you're building out like energy infrastructure and you're polluting while you're doing it, but you also have to clean up that pollution because it'll be negative points. It's really, really fun kind of worker placement game that I think works really, really well. I like it quite a bit.
Agreed. My number 153 is Onirim, or Nirim. This is a solo game where you are playing out these cards. Really cool art, and it's you're kind of dealing with nightmares and you're in dreams. And it's ultimately kind of just like a set not want to say collection game, but you're trying to put down cards of the same color with different symbols in a row to grab these keys and unlock the 8 doors to sort of escape your dream.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shuffling involved. As these nightmares pop up, they get in your way and set you back and stuff. It's a really fun game. The app works well. We have the game here if you just want to have a cathartic experience of shuffling cards a lot.
All the time, yeah.
But it's a good solo game. It's a really good solo game. The app works well and it's very beautiful.
My number 153 is Rococo. I really like Rococo, where you are garment makers and you are making pretty dresses and awesome suits, and you are putting them on people and putting them into the king's ball, and you basically want more of your suits and dresses in the ball to kind of have some area control. This is one of those games that's got a lot of little stuff, a little bit of deck building, a little bit of area control, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but it's not like a lot of anything, but it works really, really well. And it's just a cool theme. I just like the theme. You're like making cool dresses and cool suits and put them in a ball. I think that's awesome.
My 152 is Lorenzo Il Magnifico. This is a great game by the famous Italian designers and stuff. This one uses dice and stuff, and you're kind of trying to build up in different areas and kind of ascend these towers and grab things. Honestly, it's just like hard to even like remember as we're going through this flurry of games really quickly, because it's just like bunch of Euro game stuff. But honestly, it's pretty great.
We're enjoying it, right? My number 152 is 10. This is a game where it's kind of a push your luck game where you're trying to get sets of these cards. The cards are just numbers on them. They have different colors as well. And you're trying to get a full set, if you can, of 1 through 9. But it's kind of push your luck where you can bust if you end up going over a certain amount. And it's just a really, really fun game by the group that makes like Point Salad and stuff like that. And they just make these small games that work really, really well.
It's fantastic. My number 151 is The Loop. So I guess I do like it more than you per this
honestly, this is one where I'm actually surprised Loop wasn't in my top 100. So I don't know what. Apparently,
Nick does like it more.
That day, I hated it.
As Nick says, you're kind of going around trying to fix the timeline. I really love the production is nice.
Yeah.
I love the theme. My only knock on it again is that 2-player. I don't think it scales very well. It's super hard, but
although
it is
I played a
very.
4-player, we got destroyed.
There you go. So yeah, maybe it doesn't. But it's a very fun game. I really like what you're doing.
There's ways to make that game harder, and I'm like, how?
Why would we ever?
My number 151, Mike already talked about, is Fire Robin, or Finishing Time. This is the one where you are trying to relax yourself, so when you go back to work, you're not too stressed out, but you got to strive for better working conditions, all kind of stuff, more vacation time. It's a really cool theme by Freedom and Freeze that I just think works really well. Pretty light game, but just a really interesting, different theme that I really like a lot. That's Finishing Time.
That's halfway through our list, my dude. 150 is the Taverns of Tiefenthal. This is a Wolfgang Warsch game where you're running a tavern. You're drawing out cards each round and hoping to draw as many of your employees as you can before you fill up your tavern with guests. Those employees will allow you to do a bunch of different things. You're then rolling out dice and assigning them to your guests and trying to get the most money you can. You're trying to feed beer to people to bring them in, and you can upgrade your player board. Your tavern is just a series of puzzle pieces. You can upgrade them to get better versions of stuff. It's really, really fun. It's definitely not perfect. We have the expansion for it, which we want to try, but like I love so many of the elements of this game.
Yeah, I like the idea of it more than I like the actual game.
Sure.
My number 150 is Gingerbread House. This is by Praise B.
This
is a game where you are building up a gingerbread house, and there are evil little monsters coming to eat your house, and so you're trying to capture them and
Cinderella,
kill them.
we see through you.
We see through you. And you're getting different kinds of gingerbread. This is a game where you are putting out these tiles. Anything you cover up, you get. Very Phil Walker Harding style. It's really, really cute. Great to play around this time of the year. We're filming this in December. Really good time to play it because it's just cute, cozy, and kind of Christmassy.
I agree. Number 149 is Target. This is a 2-player worker placement game that's all about setting up this kind of grid of cards that you fill in the middle with goods and tribe cards. And you are kind of doing this tactical placement of workers that will create intersections in the middle where you put down a couple more markers, and you get to make use of all of your workers and your tribe markers to ultimately gain goods and put out tribe cards, which give you powers, points, and a little bit of set collection. Really fun.
Indeed. My number 149 is Castles of Burgundy, the dice game. This is the roll and write version of Castles of Burgundy. We actually played before the Castles of Burgundy.
Yeah.
And it's really, really good. It's a great roll and write implementation where it feels very similar to Castles of Burgundy in a lot of different ways, but it's still definitely very much its own game. It's very much a travel game. We bring it every single time we travel. Pretty much the only time, probably the last 10 times we've played this game has been on a plane or while in an airport. It's our go-to travel game. I actually think it's a really great implementation.
148 for me is Fife. This is a new game from Pegasus Spiel, which
Fun.
Gives you, you have 2 of these little tokens. You have to put one of them into this little 5x5 grid that you're building. And then you have these little surfboards, which are these various scoring conditions. And you're going to be adding these in strategic ways because this makes this one row you want to have numbers 1 through 5. You want to be ascending. Or descending. Every tile has a color and also a symbol. So sometimes it's about the symbol, sometimes it's about the colors. And you're trying to make all of your rows and all of your columns work together, which is a really fun mental puzzle. Yeah. I really enjoy 5 a lot.
Really tough mental puzzle. My number 148, Mike talked about, it's Wits and Wagers. It's a great party game, again, where you're trying to find out a numerical answer, but you don't really need to know the answer. You just need to try and bet on who you think is the closest to the answer. Price is Right
Such a good party game.
It's so good. It works incredibly well.
Yeah. My number 147 is Pulsar 2849. Vladimir Suki goodness. As you said, it sat and sat and sat and sat, and then we kind of got like intimidated by it. Yeah. Then we played it and we're like, A, it's not that heavy, and B, it's really fun, does a lot of really cool stuff that we really enjoy, so I gotta play it again, man.
Yeah. 147 for me is Jaipur. This is a 2-player game where you are trying to essentially collect various goods and then turn them in for points. Yeah. Really, really good 2-player game. It's also got a really good app. The new version has like vintage trade art. It's a very, very good head-to-head. Oh, I'm going to take this. Oh, please don't take that. Oh, gosh, I needed that one. It's a very, very good game.
146 is The Bloody Inn. This is a game that is a macabre theme where you are running a hotel where you're killing your guests, burying them under the floorboards, and just robbing them blind while you do it.
Great stuff.
It's got great hand management stuff where the cards in your hand are what you use to pay for things, and certain types of cards will make certain things cheaper. But the more cards you hold in your hand, the more money you have to pay, because now they're under, you're under the employ of you. So there's a lot of really interesting things to balance in this game with a bonkers theme.
Yeah, really well.
Really good.
My number 446 is Railroad Inc. Railroad Inc. is a great roll and write that I feel like was kind of the beginning of like the roll and write craze. It's still kind of going.
Yep.
This game, we're going to roll out these 4 dice, and they're going to have various train tracks and highways on them, and you have to put them all into your little grid, and you're basically trying to connect contiguous lines to the edge of your map. Really, really tough game, because again, those 4 dice you have to put into your grid. Really, really tough, but really, really fun.
My 145 is Evolution Climate. This is, again, we had Evolution, we added Climate to it, which really does make the game better.
Yes.
It's all about adapting your species, trying to eat as much food as you can. We've just kind of cooled on it because we've had it for a long time and played it a bunch.
It's funny because Oceans probably should be higher than this one.
It should be, and it will definitely end up higher.
For sure.
Absolutely.
My number 145 is Deep Sea Adventure. This is an Oink game where you are deep sea divers and going down this line of treasure, and you're pushing your luck. The farther down you go, the better the treasure is, but it's going to take you longer and longer to get up. You're going to run out of oxygen. I've never won this game. I've never not died in this game, and I will never win this game. I don't care. I'm always going for that damn treasure.
That's never the goal. 144 for me is Tales of Glory. This is a tile laying game where you are putting down different tiles. You're drafting them by kind of doing simultaneous selection, where it's like, I want tile 3, and if we both get it, there's a bit of a tiebreaker there.
Yeah.
As you add out these tiles, it's all about adjacency, the types of tiles themselves, the things they provide. It's really, really fun. It just kind of has a generic theme, so it kind of went under the radar, but it's a super solid tiling game.
Really good. My 144 is Whirling Witchcraft. This is a game great around the Halloween time. This is a game where you are putting out these essentially like potion cards, and you're making concoctions, and especially you're trading resources in for different resources, and everything you convert, everything you make is going to go into your cauldron. Those cauldrons are going to get passed over to the player on your left, and then they have to take them onto their board. What you're trying to do is overload their board. Any overload, any overflow is going to go back onto your board, and those are points. First person to 5 points wins. I really like this game because you're just having to adapt with what's coming to you, and you're trying to kick it over to someone else. It just works really, really well. I really like Whirling Witchcraft a lot.
It plays super fast. You'll often play multiple rounds as well. Number 143 is Pagoda. This is a 2-player game where you are building out collectively these pagodas, and it's all about trying to set yourself up so that your opponent doesn't reap a ton of rewards from the turn you took, and then it sets you up for your next turn to have a bunch of points and stuff. It's a game where you're scoring points every turn, which feels very satisfying. It's a beautiful game. Really like it a lot.
My number 143 is Sanctum. This is a game where you are kind of adventurer, some kind of like a rogue or this kind of thing. And you're going up this big old trail, fighting demons as you go. All
Unlocking
those demons
skills.
Yeah, all those demons turn into loot, and you'll put that loot on, which is mostly going to allow you to mitigate dice rolls. And then, like Mikey said, you can upgrade all these skills and unlock all this kind of crazy stuff. In the very end, you go and fight this big old Balrog looking thing. And you're essentially, the whole game is you building up for this end fight, which is very, very difficult. It's really, really fun. I like it a lot. It does kind of get stale after a couple plays. I still really like it. I definitely like it a lot more than Mike does.
But it's really cool what's going on.
It's a really cool concept that I think needs to get expanded upon. I don't think it's sold well enough to get expanded upon, unfortunately. But I still really like Sanctum. I think it's cool.
For sure. Number 142 is Libertalia, Winds of Galecrest, or just Libertalia. I have played the Stonemaier edition. I think does a lot of it keeps the game almost identical, but updates a couple things. Anthropomorphized animal pirates now, which I enjoy quite a bit. It's a great sort of simultaneous selection mind game.
Yeah. My number 142 is Welcome to. This again, I feel like was one of the first games again that kind of kicked off the roll
that railroading we got pretty much at the same time.
Pretty much. This is a game where you're building out a suburb. That's all you're doing. You're just putting addresses on houses in a suburb.
Organizing a couple streets.
And then basically you're gonna flip over a couple different cards, and you can choose a pair of cards. You're gonna have a number, which is gonna be an address, and some kind of feature of the house, like a fence or a pool or a park or something like that. And you have to put it into your neighborhood. You have 3 streets you're working on. It's a tough game where you're like, oh, because you have to go in ascending order. So you're like, I really need an 8 because I don't want to put this 10 here because it's going to be really hard. Really fun game that, again, we haven't played in a while, but I know every time we play it, we're like, that's right, Welcome to is really, really good.
It's really good.
Very good, yeah.
Yeah. 141 for me is Long Shot the Dice game. This is a game that is very surprising to us. It's a roll and write kind of horse race betting game where you're going to be rolling out dice that are going to move these horses numbered 1 through 8 around the track in a race. Certain horses are more likely to win than others, and you are placing bets on horses based on how the race is progressing. And trying to get the payouts based on who wins and doesn't. You can buy horses, you can dress your jockeys and do a bunch of things. It's really simple, really, really fun at all player counts. You can play up to 8 players. And the horse race is actually really intriguing.
Yeah, it's really good. My number 141 is My Little Scythe. This is the kind of kids version of Scythe. I like it more than Scythe.
Yeah.
It's a cute little version of Scythe that I think is a really good intro to Scythe. I love the concept of My Little Scythe, and I think it works really, really well. Where it's very Scythe-like. There's a lot of things are like, oh, this is just stuff that's in Scythe, just simplified and cuter. And I don't know. I've always been very, very charmed by this game, even though that most times I'd probably still rather play Scythe than My Little Scythe. But I like My Little Scythe more because I'm very charmed by it, basically.
I respect that. I respect that. 140 for me is Isle of Skye from Chieftain to King. This is an Alexander Pfister and a co-design with someone else who I can't remember the time. Apologies, my friend. This is a game that kind of borrows some like Carcassonne-ness, where you're placing out tiles that you'll kind of bid on and have to buy from your opponents and things like that. And you're going to place these tiles out in such a way to make roads and create little areas of land. And the different tiles have iconography and stuff. And there's going to be, I think, 6 different scoring conditions that each are going to score a couple times. Is where Cartographers gets its kind of scoring style from. And so, depending on the game, you might want to have a lot of this type of icon or a bunch of this kind of animal and things.
It's Carcassonne and Cartographers had a baby.
It's exactly that. Yeah. It's really fun, honestly. It's really fun.
Good. My number 140 is another kind of travel game for us. Is Patchwork Doodle, which is the roll and write version of Patchwork, which we first heard of. We're like, do we need this? And then we played it. We're like, wow, this is actually really, really fun.
It's kind of fun.
I really like Patchwork Doodle. It's just you're getting a different kinds of patches that are different polygonal.
You're just drawing them in this time,
and you're trying to fill them in. There's differences to Patchwork than Patchwork Doodle, but it works really better than you think it would. I really like it. Yeah.
139 for me is Let's Make a Bus Route, which I talked about. Get on board at the top of this list. This
I feel like those are gonna switch.
100% they will, because we don't have Let's Make a Bus Route. But the first time I played it and stuff was a very kind of nostalgic time, so it's ranked highly for me. Where you are collectively drawing on a city and trying to avoid each other because you don't want to pollute the city with your bus route, and you're picking up stuff along the way.
My number 139 is Colbert, and Mike already talked about it. It's a really Kramer and Kiesling game where it's got this really cool way you get coal. You're trying to fulfill contracts. It's a worker placement situation where nothing's ever blocked, but you just have to place more workers than the last person. Yeah. And it works very, very well. It's awesome.
138 for me is Pictomania. This is a fantastic drawing game because it's all about getting a clue, needing to draw as fast as you can, because as soon as you stop drawing, you start guessing on other people's, and you want to be the first one to guess. But you need people to be able to guess your drawing as well, because that will also benefit you. So there's that push and pull of like, do as much detail as you can while also not taking any time at all. It's a really fun drawing game. You don't have to
be as good as it is.
Yeah, you don't have to be a good artist to do it, which are the best drawing games.
Yeah. My 137 is the Pandemic Legacy series. I really liked all 3 Pandemic Legacies a lot.
They are great.
We live streamed them all. We played each one in one full live stream. It was very, very fun to do it that way. I really liked all 3 were like different but very similar.
Yeah.
They just rocked. I thought they were outstanding. Some of my favorite gaming experiences.
Absolutely. 137 for me is Ex Libris. It's a fantastic game where you're running like a mystical library in a world with like Bigfoot and stuff like that. It's just a great theme, an idea. I do think I agree with you. It's a better solo game than it is multiplayer game, but there's some really cool stuff where you're doing and getting books and stuff. There's a lot of humor in the books themselves, a lot of fun little nuance to get, like little Easter eggs.
I actually messed up. My number 137 was Pandemic Legacy. My 138 was Sierra West.
Got it.
Sierra West is a great game that I like definitely much more than Mike, and it's kind of a frontier themed game. Again, kind of like Rococo. It's got a lot of little stuff, a little bit of deck building, a little bit of worker placement, a little bit of programming, and it does work, but it's just ultimately too fiddly. I still really like the concept of it. It's a very cool game. Feels very unique, but ultimately I think it's going to kind of keep going down because it's just a little too fiddly.
I wish it was a little more dynamic, really. 136 for me is Dinosaur World, the follow-up to Dinosaur Island. Believe me, we played a lot of Dinosaur Island. We enjoyed it. Dinosaur World could go up a little bit. Ultimately, it didn't streamline enough stuff from Dinosaur Island. It still takes up a lot of space. I'm kind of like, I wish that you just made it a little smoother, and they didn't. However, the things in this game are kind of objectively more interesting. I enjoy it, but it's just not going to be an all-timer.
All right, my number 136 is Chimera Station. This is a cool worker placement game where you are literally building out your workers. I mean, literally building them. They are snap-apart pieces, and you are aliens building out a space station, and you can put different body parts on these aliens, like big old tentacles, which allow you to get more resources, leaf arms, which allow you to feed your people easier, crab claws, which allow you to push other people off stuff, and you can essentially customize your workers by actually snapping on pieces.
It's great.
It's one of those games with a gimmick that really is integral to the game and works very, very well. I really like Chimera Station a lot.
Agreed. 135 for me is Le Havre, the Inland Port. It's a two-player version of Le Havre.
You let this one so high.
It's really fun. It does some like really cool stuff. The app works really well. That could be a recency bias that it is where it is, but it is where it is. It does some like Le Havre type stuff, more in like the theming. It's a very different game.
Yes, it's nothing like Le Havre.
But it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. You have this like grid system of like your resources. I think is interesting. And I actually enjoyed it.
I thought it was great.
If it was at all available, I would pick it up in person.
For sure. My number 135 is Fleet the Dice game. Mike already talked about it. I really like it as a roll and write. I still think it's great. It's just, the problem is it's just static. And I find myself doing the same thing over and over and over again.
100%.
Still really like it a lot to my 135, so it's not very low ultimately. But like, I think it's going to keep going down. I think it'll get cold at some point in the future here. Because I just feel like it needs more. And maybe there's an expansion. I honestly can't remember. Let us know down in the comments. But I like it.
134 for me is Histrio. This is a fantastic game, great production value, it's great simultaneous selection where you're hoping to be the only person who selected the location that you selected because you'll get all these cool cards. And you're trying to put on the best play you can for the king whose mood changes wildly all the time. The only reason this isn't in like the 100 or a little bit closer is just we don't have the player count to support it very often. It never comes off the shelf, but I really like it and I really don't think it's going anywhere because we have pushed this game to people for a long time and I think it's vastly underrated.
My number 134 is Sagrada. This is a game where you're building a stained glass window with these very colorful dice. I still think this is one of the best Gateway games. It might be a little bit too heavy for Gateway, but ultimately you can usually
Gateway
get by.
Plus,
I think it's a great game where you're drafting these dice and putting them in your stained glass window, but you can't have the same color next to each other and you can't have the same number next to each other. So if you have someone who likes like Sudoku, those kinds of things where these like kind of number puzzles and like spatial puzzles, it just works super, super well. And it's just absolutely gorgeous. They supported it over the years. Sagrada is really good.
133 for me is Flamecraft. This is a new game from Lucky Duck that it's just so beautiful. It's all about these like dragons that are just like artisans and they help out and you have all these cute resources and stuff and you're kind of like building out these buildings in the town and making them kind of more and more valuable to collect more and more resources. Then you can supercharge them by enchanting those buildings to get your kind of main hit of points. It's just like really kind of subsists based on the art. It's really cute. It's really kind of light because you're either gathering resources or doing an enchantment, so it's very easy to understand and explain. There's different types of dragons that provide different powers, but none of it's overwhelming or heavy. It's just a great production, honestly. And hopefully it creates some board gamers.
My 133 is Blue Lagoon, which is a Reiner Knizia game where you are Polynesian people going out and finding these islands and then gathering these resources on the islands, and then you will score, and then you'll, at the first half of the game, you're putting out these huts, and the whole second half of the game, you take off all your pieces except for those huts, and then now you explore the same islands with the same kind of scoring, but now you have to explore from your huts. And that small change makes the two halves of the game, although very, very similar, still pretty different.
They just feel different.
And it just works really well. It's a super, super simple game, Reiner Knizia style, that just works. It works so well. It's very pretty, cool theme, it rocks.
My 132 is Hero Realms. Nick mentioned it's a two-player deck building game where you just get right into like wailing on each other. There's all sorts of cool synergies you can get by focusing on certain types of cards, certain colors and stuff. There's just interesting abilities. You can put out Guardians. It's just really fun. I love the fantasy theme.
Yeah, it's cool. My number 132 is Palm Island. This is a game that you actually play in the palm of your hand. It's just a really cool, unique little game where you are essentially trying to score points by upgrading your cards. Your cards will have like stones or fish or wood on them, and you're kind of putting them off to the side, and then you can put those back. Normally that's you spending those resources to essentially flip cards over, to turn them over this way, to flip them and turn them over, to essentially get points.
Cool.
And you're going through your deck, I think 6 times, and then at the end of that 6 times, you see who has the most points. You can also play this game solo, competitively, and cooperatively.
Yeah.
And we have plastic cards, so you can literally play it while in
underwater.
A hot tub. It's really fun.
Yeah. My 131 is Point Salad. This is very basic level set collection stuff where you have scoring cards, and on the back sides of those cards are vegetables. On your turn, you can either draft 2 vegetables. There's like carrots and cabbage and stuff like that, or you can take a scoring card. The scoring cards are gonna be like, hey, for every set of onion and lettuce you have, you get 5 points. Okay, so I'm gonna try to get a bunch of onions and lettuce. Another scoring card might give you like points for carrots, but you lose 2 points for lettuce. You're like, okay, maybe I don't want some lettuce. It's just simple set collection stuff like that. It doesn't get in the way where you have to allocate stuff to certain things. All vegetables score for all scoring cards. It goes down smooth and easy. It's great
one of the
filler
cleanest games. Yeah, really one of the cleanest
Simple,
games.
man.
My 131 is Witchstone. It's another Reiner Knizia game, but this game is combo-tastic. You are putting out these kind of like hexomino tiles and building these groups of actions. And how big that group is how many times you get to do that action. And you just get to do this thing. Oh, now I get this thing. So I can do this thing over here. Now I can do this thing. And you just do dumb combos in the game. And it's really, really fun. Pretty light ultimately because again it's Reiner Knizia, but just works well. Really, really good.
130 for me is Wild Space from Pandasaurus Games. This is a game where you are kind of assembling a crew of spacefaring
monkeys and
space monkeys
octopuses.
And these characters will give you all sorts of like just powerful abilities, and you're kind of doing set collection stuff, kind of like engine building kind of things, and it's really cool because you get like 10 turns in the game. Something that seems like you could never get anything done, and you actually build up this like really cool thing with these cards, and so it's very satisfying. It's got a cool ramp up, and it's not very long either.
My number 130 is a game that I feel like I like way more than everyone else on the planet. This is Viral. This I think is one of the coolest area control games where you are viruses taking over a body. And so you are doing area control in different parts of the body. Like I'm in the spleen and I'm in the kidneys, and you are like fighting each other and like kicking each other out. But the whole thing is very like circular because the circular system. So you have to go back into the heart through the veins, and to get up to the brain, you have to go this way. It's very, very cool and accurate. And it's just, I think it's one of the most interesting takes on a area control game that I think works really, really well.
Really unique game.
And yet, every time we introduce it to people, people don't really like it that much. And so we end up getting rid of it. I feel like I'm the only one who likes it, but I like it a lot.
Yeah, for some reason we dug it more than others. I don't know. My number 129 is Coffee Roaster. This is a solo game about...
play this game.
Me too. I saw it the other day, and I almost bought it. And then I didn't, and I'm like, I should have bought it. I don't know why I didn't. But anyway, Coffee Roaster is a solo game about making over kind of like 3 rounds the perfect cup of coffee. It's a kind of a push your luck bag builder game.
Yeah.
Where you're going to be getting different beans and roasting them to higher and higher levels, kind of making them a darker roast. And between each cup of coffee, you're going to have certain goals you're going to hit in terms of how much you roast, what kind of flavor profiles, which are these colorful chits that you can draw. And you're trying to put together the elements that make a really good cup of coffee. So it's kind of push your luck because as you roast, you're going to have maybe a higher chance of pulling out the right things. But then when you go to actually kind of pour the cup, it's sort of what comes out, and you're hoping that you got everything in that bag to a level that you have a really good shot of brewing a good cup. It's just interesting stuff. You're kind of changing in chits and things. It's just a solo game about making a cup of coffee, which is a great theme. I should have bought it.
You should have bought it. Number 129 is Bag of Dang Chips. Bag of Chips is a game that it looks like a bag of chips, and it's literally open it up, but it's a push your luck game where you get these scoring cards, and the scoring cards will be like, there's going to be more potato chips in here than teriyaki chips, which is very likely. There's more potato chips in there in general than teriyaki chips, and you're getting these scoring cards, and throughout the game, you're discarding some of them because you're like, that's definitely not going to happen. And by the end of the game, you have a couple that you're going to be scoring, and you'll score those ones, and then you will lose points for the other ones you kept, and you just the whole time you're like, oh, please pull out a chicken chick, please pull out a sour cream and onion, I need that one. And it's just a push your luck game that works that has no right to be as fun as this. It works so well as a little travel
it's just really
game.
Unique, yeah.
It's so much fun.
128 for me is Istanbul. This is a game where you are kind of managing this stack of workers. I played it in the app. I'd love to try it physically. You're taking your little stack of workers, you're moving kind of to different locations on this little grid of locations, and you're kind of getting resources, turning in resources to be the first to get kind of these 5 rubies and stuff. But it's this great thing of like, as you drop workers off, your stack gets smaller and smaller, and then you kind of need to go back over places you've gained to pick your workers back up. Yeah. So it's this kind of like sequencing programming element to it that I think is just really kind of fascinating. I would love to explore more and actually play it physically.
My number 128 is Potion Explosion, Posh-Splosh. As Mike talked about earlier, this is kind of a Candy Crush type feeling game where you're trying to get these potions. You're pulling out these marbles. If the same color marbles then hit each other, you get those marbles that kind of all explode. You can kind of get these big, crazy marble engines. Filling out these potions, which will flip over when they're done, that you can then use to get more marbles. It works so well. It goes over so well with new people. It's really good.
Number 127 for me is Chimera Station, which you mentioned recently. All about popping those workers together, putting little body parts on, sticking them back together, giving them little abilities. Just a really cool, fun game. I feel like we've kind of played it out, but man, like the toy factor of those workers, I have not seen that before. We have not seen it since. It's a cool way to do worker placement. I'd love to see more stuff like that where you modify your workers in some way or other.
Yeah. My number 127 is the Quacks of Quedlinburg, talking about making a potion or making a big old, thing. I like Quacks of Quedlinburg. It's a bag building game, a push your luck game I really like. I've definitely cooled on it a decent amount. I think some of it we kind of talked about during the top 100 when you talked about it. This is a game we like to introduce new people to. Because of COVID, we haven't been playing with that many new people, which means we haven't played it too much. Because you and me aren't going to play it just on our own that much. But I do still really love the Quacks of Quedlinburg. I think it's absolutely outstanding. We just don't play it that much anymore.
126 is a really fantastic game with maybe the best art ever. It's Honeybuzz. This game is all about taking these tiles and putting them out to create these little cells as you're building out your honey, your hive of honeycomb and stuff like that. As you create cells that have an empty spot in the middle, any and all actions that are showing on the tiles around it get to activate. So it's this kind of interesting style of like activating actions and things like that. It's all about getting honey and then selling it to the local animals of the forest. Really cool theme. It's bee economics. I think it might go higher with the expansion depending on how those modules and stuff sit with us.
I'm cooling on it, yeah.
But man, it's such a pretty game and it's just cool and cute.
Yeah, it totally is. My number 126 is Super Mega Lucky Box.
Super fail!
Praise be.
Praise be.
Praise be. Super Mega Lucky Box is a kind of a bingo style game where you're going to be drawing out these numbers, then everyone has to mark off one of those numbers on a couple different cards you have. And that's it. And then you're trying to fill in these cards. You're trying to mark off all those numbers. You'll get some bonuses. If you fill in a row, it might be at the end of that row, there's like a 9. It means like once you fill out that row, you again need to mark off a 9 somewhere. That's all it is. It's super, super great. No theme, not even trying to be. It's just numbers.
Don't bother.
It's just great. I also love the name, Super Mega Lucky Box.
It's just fun to say. Great font on the front.
Yeah.
125 for me is Beyond the Sun. So this is kind of a space game that's all about this like tech tree in the middle of the board.
Yeah.
And it's cool to have a game that is kind of centered around that tech tree. As you get to the next kind of level 2, level 3, and then ultimately like level 4 cards, you get different types of actions you can do. It's something that's kind of cool because there's not like a lot of different things that you do in the game, so it's kind of easy to get into, but you can move around to these different planets and stuff and kind of extract the resources from that. You can get these things off your player board and your kind of commodities you're producing. It's kind of all about the little route you take through that tech tree. So it's one that I definitely want to play more of and kind of really sink my teeth into.
Yeah, totally. My number 125 is Crazy Coconuts, one of the greatest games ever made. This is a game, this seems kind of like beer pong, but for kids kind of, where you have these cool monkeys and they have these spring-loaded arms and you're putting coconuts in them and you're trying to launch those coconuts into your opponent's cups.
On the other side of the table.
But I mean, these things are kind of squishy and they just bounce like crazy. And this game,
and in weird ways too.
It's just like beer pong. You're just trying to get them into the cups, and it's so much fun.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'll never apologize for having it this high.
Absolutely not. It's fantastic. My 124 is Jaipur, which you mentioned.
Yeah.
Fantastic 2-player card game, all about trying to deny and sort of control the access to what comes out in the market so that you have to reveal stuff so I get first pick at these things, turning in sets of stuff to collect these gems, trying to be the richest kind of merchant you can.
Yeah.
Great app, which gives you all sorts of different like ways to play the game.
Yeah.
Jaipur is and Ultimate. I love a game.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
My number 124, sorry, I didn't cut you off there, is Hente's. Hente's is kind of a civilization themed game where you're going to be essentially... It's got a
weird, very abstract.
Yes, it's got this very interesting like action selection system where there's these action tiles all over the board, and you can kind of grab them from wherever. But the interesting thing is like the stronger the action tile, the more time you're going to be spending doing that.
If you're building a pyramid, it takes a while.
It's going to take a while, and so you have a time track. And so if you ever fill that time track, you're done for the round. So there's like this weird mix of like trying to do as much as you can while not spending too much time doing it, and it really works well. We don't play it too much because we've kind of cooled on it a little bit, but it's still a very interesting game. That's kind of got like stick figure art, weirdly enough, but it's got this. It's a cool thing.
Yeah. My 123 is Whirling Witchcraft. This is, as you mentioned, kind of a quick engine building game where you're trying to build an engine to specifically overwhelm the opponent to the side of you. And you're receiving stuff from the opponent to your other side who's trying to overwhelm you. And building that engine, really fun Halloween game. Great art.
Yeah. My 123 is Chai. This is a game where you're trying to brew tea for customers. You have your own little tea shop. And you are collecting different kinds of tea. You're collecting different accoutrements to that tea, like vanilla or milk or honey or
jasmine,
that kind of stuff. And you're trying to make these tea orders, and that's pretty much it. It's a very light game, but it's got this. We have like the deluxe version, which is very, very overproduced, but it's great to get people into the hobby. Be like, look at this crazy, cool, very pretty, cool game. And so Chai, I love it. It's a very light game. It's not my favorite game on the planet, but I'm very charmed by it, and I love how well it gets people into the hobby.
100%. My 122 is Caper Europe. It's a 2-player game where you're pulling a heist and you get a crew at these 3 different locations trying to steal goods and really kind of have the most criminal influence. And there's this bit of a tug of war over the locations.
Very cool.
You, of course, want to have the most kind of presence there. There's you go through card drafting and alternating between getting crew cards and then getting item cards, which will mitigate that crew. There's some set collection elements. There's different ways to score at the end of the game. And you play in different cities. It's really fun.
Yeah. My number 122 is Raiders of the North Sea. This is a kind of a Shem Phillips game, kind of one that put them on the map. And this is a game where you are kind of Viking people, and it's a worker placement game, very simple, where you are going to put down a worker, do that action, and then you're going to pick up a worker from somewhere else and do that action. So at the end of your round, you always have one worker. It's a very good game to teach worker placement to, because, hey, at the end of the round, you must have a worker. If you don't, you did something wrong.
Absolutely.
And it just works very, very well. It's very popular. It's got good expansions and stuff like that. I don't like it nearly as much as I like basically the West Kingdom trilogy for the most part, but I do like it still.
121 is Dinosaur Tea Party. This is Guess Who with some twists. And also, Everyone is Fancy Dinosaurs, which is an infinitely better theme.
Some of the best art
You
ever.
are trying to guess the traits of the various players who are different dinosaurs in this tableau of cards between you. It's really fun. You get super into like talking very proper and whatnot, and you're just dinosaurs. Honestly, it's a fantastic kind of game to play with the family.
Yeah, really fun. My number 121 is The Seventh Continent. This is a big kind of exploration game where you are exploring around this island. You are flipping over these cards. You don't know what's going to be over there. Could be a tiger. And it's kind of this big survival game where you are cursed and you are trying to get this curse off you, but you got to go find how to do that. And it really is, you're just like bumbling around trying to find it, but it's a very simple game no matter what you're doing, whether you're climbing or you're hunting or you're doing this, you're doing that, you're always just flipping over cards trying to get successes. So it's ultimately very, very simple, where if one person knows the game, you can play this game with anyone because it's cooperative. You can kind of just guide them through, and there's a whole bunch of different curses. We had a lot of fun playing this. I also played it with my roommates a bunch, like a couple years ago, and like we all loved it. And it reminded me like, oh yeah, this is so much fun. I'm really excited for 7 Citadel, which is like the next version. It'll be here in 26 years. So I'm not expecting to get it anytime soon.
Not wrong about
but I'm really excited to play it with Joy, your mother-in-law, because it's going to be really fun. 7th Continent's really cool.
120 is Miami for me. This is a Kramer and Kiesling, or Michael Kiesling game specifically, apologies. And tile laying goodness, like you said. I really like the idea of kind of stacking stuff up, and you score points literally every turn, which is nice.
Yeah. My number 120 is King Domino, or King Domino Origins, ultimately, because I think it's the best version of it. This is a game where you're putting out these domino tiles, which will have 1 or 2 landscapes on them. You have to match at least one of those landscapes with something else in your kingdom, and you're trying to get these crowns to score points. The amount of crowns, you'll times the amount of crowns times the amount of spaces in that specific landscape, and that's it. It won the Spiel des Jahres for a reason. It's really, really good. It's just simple and great.
Number 119 for me is Can't Stop. It's a pure push your luck game where you're rolling out dice and working up different tracks between 2 and 12. So all the possible combinations you can roll with 2 different dice. Yeah. And the main thing is you can only be working on 3 tracks on any one turn. And once you have those 3 out, if you roll and you don't roll any of the 3 tracks, you bust out, which happens to me very often. And you don't get progress on turn, but you're trying to make your way to the top of 3 tracks.
I've never played Can't Stop.
It's ridiculously fun. Pure push your luck. Similar to Deep Sea Adventure for you, I will never win because I'm going to go for it every time.
My number 119 is Abyss. This is a game where you are underwater people, and it's kind of ultimately a set collection, but you're underwater, but it's not. It's all like political. You're like these politicians, kind of be like, and you're trying to essentially gain power and influence, essentially by getting these big lords, and these lords will have lots of influence and lots of different abilities, and you're getting these different factions like the Squid faction and the Crab faction, and you're turning in to get points. Ultimately, it's one of those games that kind of like Histrio, like Mike talked about earlier, is the game is very overproduced, and so it looks like it's going to be a heavier game than it is. It's ultimately pretty light, which I think is a good thing, but it kind of confuses me when you go into it. But I think Abyss is great. I still think it has the best art pretty much in any game ever.
It's pretty cool.
It's so freaking good. I love Abyss.
118 for me is Merv, the Heart of the Silk Road. This is a really fun game that for us, we've just sort of played out by this point. We've sort of explored everything in it, but you're working on these different areas of the game, kind of 4 different areas, and getting spice and stuff. It's beautiful art by Ian O'Toole. Really fun. The action selection is really interesting, so it's really a solid one I recommend.
Yeah. My number 118 is 5 Tribes, which is a game where it's kind of a Moncala game. You have all these meeples out. You're going to pick up a bunch of meeples from one tile and then drop them off Moncala style, and then the last one you drop off has to match one of the meeples there. Depending on what meeples are that you drop off, you'll then take all the meeples of that color, and then depending on the color of the meeple, you get to do different actions. There's like set collection. You're trying to put out kind of these camels, which will allow you to claim the tile. There's a whole bunch of different stuff you can do, and it's really, really, really good.
And you're so much better at it than I am, but I still love that game.
I do tend to do better.
117 for me is Dinosaur Island, the Rawr and Write. This is my favorite dinosaur game. I do think it works kind of really well as a roll and write, where you're still making DNA and doing all that kind of fun stuff with those amber dice that were first introduced in Dinosaur Island. You're building out different like paddocks and stuff and going on little tours on your written sheets. It works great.
Works really good. My number 117 is Wild Space. Mike talked about it's the game where, again, you have this crew of different animals, space animals, and you are trying to build out doing set collection and things like that. A lot of these crew cards allow you to put in like other crew cards, and so you only have 10 turns, and you're like, I'm not going to be able to do anything, and you end up getting to do a lot, and it's really, really fun and satisfying. I really like Wild Space a lot.
116 for me is Wondake. This is a game where you are Native American tribes in the kind of Midwest area around Lake Michigan and such, or the Great Lakes in general. And it has a really cool action selection system where you're kind of going to tic-tac-toe, a row or a column or a diagonal. You're going to make use of these tiles, and you have to really balance the 4 areas of the game because on either end of the board there's 2 tracks, and the lower track is what scores. You have to be really balanced in your approach.
Yeah, it's really good. My number 116 is Dinosaur World. Mike talked about it's kind of the successor to Dinosaur Island. I've always liked Dinosaur Island, I feel like, more than you, and I still think I like Dinosaur World more than you. I really like Dinosaur World a lot. I think it's really great. I do wish they had like simplified it a little bit. They didn't. You're like, oh, they're making kind of a new Dinosaur Island.
Physically smaller by like 10%.
If anything, it's even bigger than Dinosaur Island. I'm like, please, the hexes are like this big. They're humongous. It's humongous. I
love it, but I'm like, where do we play this?
I do like it, but it is humongoid. But I like it a lot. It kind of takes the park aspect of Dinosaur Island was kind of just there. And I'm like, this is the part that should be like the coolest part. Is we're making a dinosaur park, and now you actually take a Jeep through your whole dinosaur park.
So much better.
That's how it should be. So Dinosaur World is my number 116. It's really fun.
115 is Marble United. So this is a cooperative game. You're playing the Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and X-Men characters now, and you're fighting against villains. The thing that's great about this is it's insanely light and easy. It's a cooperative game you can teach to anybody. Has great appeal with the theme, obviously, and the villains themselves are the most interesting part and give you really unique challenges to fight against. The minis are redonkulously cool. It's a great game that's perfect for making board gamers.
It really is. But number 115 is Juicy Fruits. This is a game where you are collecting fruit on this island, and you are doing that by using this kind of slide puzzle where you'll move a tile over, and if that's like a fruit tile, however many spaces you move, that's how much fruit you've collected.
Yep.
You are then turning in this fruit to fulfill contracts of boats that are around your island. You can also turn them into like the town center kind of thing to get these different licenses and stuff like that. Kind of special powers or special buildings that will give you a lot of points. It's really, really fun. I do think it has some balance issues, unfortunately.
Yeah, the ice creams are too powerful.
Yeah, I think it definitely could be higher in my top 100 if it was a little more balanced, but I do think it's a cool game.
My number 114 is Terracotta Army. This could definitely go up a little bit because every time we play it, I'm like, I like this more than I remember the last time, and I like it more still and more still. This is a game where you're building out the Terracotta Army, you're putting out these statues, and it creates this really interesting kind of area control influence game where you're trying to get it in and be a part of a group that someone else is working on and have the most of a certain type of figure in that group. But it's very simple. It comes down to clay and money in terms of resources. So for a tea game from Board and Dice, it's pretty accessible, which is really, really fantastic.
Yeah. Number 114 is My City. This is a Reiner Knizia legacy game.
So good.
That I think if it wasn't legacy game, it'd probably be a little higher just because we only got to play through it once. Although I'd be down to play through it again. But this is this polyomino tile game. It's a legacy game where each chapter, you're going to change the rules. The chapters are very short. They're like 45 minutes. You are expected to play through... kind
of 3 games per chapter.
Sitting, basically. And it's just... It has no theme, right? It's just you're building out a city, but it is so much fun. I think My City's outstanding.
The little revealables and stickers and stuff are really great.
Very excited for My Island.
Oh, I can't wait. Number 113 is Witchstone, which you mentioned earlier from Reiner Knizia as well.
We gotta play this game again. It's been a little bit here.
Yeah, it's a great one. You kind of think of it like Halloween because it's like wizards and stuff, but it's really can play. You play it at any time, and it's just ridiculous combos. And you get, as you build out your little tableau and your cauldron, you get to have actions where you just do the most powerful versions of an action you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, bonkers.
So it has a great ramp up to it.
Yeah, it really does. Number 113 is Zolkin, the Mayan calendar. This is, again, one of the most unique games in terms of
so good.
You're putting out your workers on these big gears, and then the main middle gear is turning, and that will turn all the gears. And you're leaving those workers there on your turn to either put out a worker or take off a worker. But the longer you leave the workers on these gears, they'll turn and turn and turn, and then the actions get stronger and stronger and stronger. So it's constantly like, ooh, do I pull them off now or do I leave them on for one more turn? And it's very, very fun.
My number 12 is Railways of the World.
So I played it.
I know. It's another one that's kind of expensive, and I want to find a way to show it to you first, but I do assume you'll like it. I really like it.
Next time we're at a con, we just got to play it because you know it's going to be there.
It's going to be there. You're building out routes and stuff to different cities. In the base game on the East Coast, there's all sorts of different maps, including the West Coast and beyond.
Yeah.
You're building out these routes and stuff, and then you're upgrading engines to be able to go to more cities, and you're just picking up and delivering different color cubes to different color cities. You want to match the city and stuff like that, and kind of go as far as you can, so you have this impressive railway system. It's just train game stuff, but it's really fun, really interesting. As cities kind of empty of their resources, they become these ghost towns and stuff. So there's really interesting things to consider.
Sucking the cities dry.
Kind of, yeah. But I really enjoy Railways of the World.
Number 112 is Point Salad. Mike talked about it already. Again, this is just one of the most elegant, light, easy game where you're collecting vegetables and turning them in for points at the end of the game. It's just set collection at its simplest. You can play it with literally anybody.
I taught it to a 5-year-old the other day, and she did great.
Yeah, it's so good.
My number 111 is Architects of the West Kingdom. So it's my only West Kingdom game that's not in the 100. It probably does deserve to be up there. It's a really good worker placement game. I enjoy it, but it is my least favorite of the West Kingdom trilogy by a decent amount. But that's not to say it's bad, especially with the expansions that they've given. There's a lot of good stuff to explore. It's a super solid. All 3 of those games are just amazing.
Damn good.
Frankly, amazing.
Good. My 111 is The Bloody Inn. Mike talked about it earlier. Great kind of macabre game where you are killing your guests and rifling their pockets to get their money, and then putting them in the garden because the cops are here and you got to make sure the cops don't spell.
Cops are walking around all over this place.
Really ridiculous game with a really ridiculous theme. That's very tight, hard to balance game. But really good.
Yeah, and keeps a lot of stuff really simple.
Yeah.
Number 110 for me is London. Nick?
The worst game ever made.
Okay. Nick does not like it. It's a Martin Wallace game where you're building out London and stuff and kind of dealing with the poverty of the people and trying to overcome that and sort of kind of like finishing time. You're trying to like getting set back, you're trying to overcome it and get the momentum going. I really enjoy a lot of the card play stuff, and it just did not work for you. That's okay.
The difference in finishing time in this one is the finishing time is fun.
There you go.
That's the difference. 110 for me is Histrio. Mike already talked about it, where you're a roving band of a troupe of actors
Miscreants
going
or
on trying to
actors?
get more actors and actresses. Simultaneous selection game, really, really fun game that's overproduced to the stars because it's Bombix. And it's really, really fun. Again, we don't really have the player count for it, unfortunately, but it's a game that we'll always evangelize, always love. History is great.
109 for me is probably out of my 100 because you don't love it as much as I do. It's Red Cathedral.
I don't get why everyone loves this game.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair, but I think it's a really fun thing, which has a rondelle of dice where you're going around and you are gaining resources and stuff and building out the Red Cathedral in Russia stuff.
True.
And you need to turn your resources to kind of put your influence in the various spires. There's a little bit of area majority. You want to have the most in a spire to kind of score the most points and stuff. I think it's just kind of really cool to work the rondelle and the puzzle of the dice, because if you pick up a dice that has 3 pips, you move it 1, 2, 3 spaces, and hopefully you land on a spot that has multiple dice because it acts as a multiplier.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
It's okay. I think it's fine. It's one of those games I don't.
It's just not your favorite.
I for some reason don't like it as much as anything else.
Just not your favorite.
My 109 is Dinosaur Island: The Roaring Right. This, I like you. It is my favorite of all the Dinosaur Island games. There's 4 of them, by the way.
You are not wrong about that.
It's really good. I honestly think it kind of works best as a roll and write. It has a lot of the kind of Dinosaur Island, Dinosaur World stuff in it, but it's simpler, it's quicker. I think it's really, really good.
My number 108 is Stone Age. This is a fantastic worker placement game. I've talked about the way that it works. Is kind of sneakily thematic, where you are ancient, civilization kind of just getting going and working, using your workers and investing multiple into an action spot to be able to roll more dice and have a better chance of successes, to gain resources, build buildings, ultimately grab these cards for this kind of various set collection, and multipliers for endgame scoring. There's a lot of really fun stuff.
Yeah,
the
really
leather
cool.
cup is amazing.
My 108 is Tales of Glory. Mike already talked about it. It's a very good simultaneous selection game where you are trying to get these tiles and put them in. Adjacency means everything. It's one of those games that when we teach people, we go like, wow, that was really good. Wow, can I get this game? Like, not really, because it didn't really sell very well.
Meh.
It's got a very, very generic theme, a very generic name, unfortunately, but it's really, really good.
It's a solid game, more than you expect. 107 for me is Korra, Rise of an Empire, you mentioned already. This is a game where you're bumping them tracks. You're kind of going through phases in order and doing stuff and building things up really well and really quickly. It's a game that has a lot of appeal to me. It just doesn't look great.
It's very
Certain
beige.
parts of it really do.
Yeah.
And the main board doesn't, so it's confusing.
The cover is not representative of how the rest of the game looks. The cover looks great.
But other things, it's weird.
My 107 is Isle of Skye from Chieftain to King. Mike talked about, which is, again, cartographers, and Carcassonne had a baby.
Oh, yeah.
This is a game where, like, I'm so excited to explore this game more and more and more, because it's if you like want Carcassonne but you want it to be thinkier, you're like, I want something Carcassonne but a little heavier tonight.
Yeah.
Isle of Skye is great. It's really fun.
War of the Ring 106 for me is the game. It's Lord of the Rings in a box. It's really fun to play. It's big and heavy, so it's kind of like every time you get to it, you're like, how does this work again? It's not like that complex. There's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just Lord of the Rings goodness. All the card art and stuff and the cards themselves is all fan service from the book specifically, so it's satisfying to play.
Good. My number 106 is Tidal Blade's Banner Festival. This is the kind of, it's not really a trick-taking game ultimately, but the trick-taking game that takes place in the Tidal Blade's universe. This is a game where you're playing out cards in a trick style, and then basically depending on how valuable or not valuable your card is, you get to do different actions. The cool thing about the game is no matter whether you have the most valuable card, one of the middle cards, or one of the lowest cards, everything is good. You always get to do something. There's not a time where you're like, well, didn't win that trick. Cool, I guess I'm not doing anything. You always get to do stuff.
Yeah. I'm just checking on my dog, Pippin.
What are you doing, Pip?
Yeah, you always get to do things, which is really cool. So it's about like which effect are you looking for, and that's the intrigue in the game.
Hi, Bubbin.
My number, we got a dog right here. My number 105 is Wavelength. I'm on the Wavelength with my dog down here. This is a great Wolfgang Warsch party game where you are going to have some really interesting conversations, because you will get something like crunchy to soft, and you'll get a number of 8 being very on the soft side. And you have to come up with a one-word clue that is going to point people to the amount of softness versus crunchiness. And so I might say like marshmallow, and people are like, that's pretty soft, that's a 10. You're like, no, I need it to be an 8. And so it just creates like
meta. Yeah.
The meta of it is absolutely incredible.
Great. It's ace. My number 105 is Quirky Circuits. This is a cooperative game where you are robots, and you are controlling these robots together without talking. You are programming them around, trying to fulfill the mission depending on whatever the robot is. It's a very, very fun game. I like it a lot. I think it's great. There's now like 6 different robots basically because there's a kind of a simpler version of it that came out as well. I think it's great.
It's really solid. My number 104 is the Castle of Tuscany. You mentioned it earlier. I really enjoy the fact that you can get kind of Castles of Burgundy light with the kind of card play. I think it's really fun. It's very reminiscent of Castle of Burgundy, just slightly different, so you can get into it quick and easily, and I think it's a really solid game at being what it is.
Yeah. My number 104 is Crystal Palace, Michael, we talked about where you were preparing for the World's Fair. I think it's really, really good. I'm with you where I wish the dice bidding part of it made a bigger impact on a lower player count game. But ultimately, I really like it where you're getting patents, you're trying to have influential people on your side, you're trying to create buzz for your part of the fair. I just think it's really, really cool.
My number 103 is Project L. Probably should be a little higher, to be honest, but this is a game where you're getting these amazing little acrylic tiles, and it's sort of kind of Tetris shapes and things like that. And you have these dual layer puzzles that you are trying to fill in with pieces completely. And as you fill pieces in, you will complete that puzzle. It might be worth points, hopefully, or it'll give you a new piece to add to your kind of collection of pieces. As you upgrade those pieces, making them larger, you can fulfill puzzles using fewer actions per turn. It's this big efficiency puzzle that's just really pretty and satisfying.
Yeah, that's nice. My 103 is Crisscross. This is another Runner Knizia game.
Out here.
This is like the symbol is rolling right out there. You're rolling 2 dice. Those dice will have will have symbols on them, and then you have to write those symbols into your little 5x5 grid.
Yep.
And you essentially want all of the same symbol in rows and columns. You want all X's or all like 3 slashes or all O's or something like that. The more of symbols you have of the same type in one column that are next to each other, the more it's going to be worth. The problem is you're like, oh, this column is really awesome, but these rows suck. And so it's really hard to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
And again, you can teach this game to anyone. You can play with an infinite amount of people. It's the perfect, like, hey, let's play a roll and write the family, but let's have like the simplest one. That's Crisscross. It's great.
Yeah. 102 for me is Seven Wonders Architects. Just missed the top 100.
I feel like this will pop in your top 100 eventually.
I think it will. I really enjoy it. We're not super big fans of Seven Wonders. You're not as big a fan of Seven Wonders Duel. Seven Wonders Architects give you a lot of the flavor of all the Seven Wonders games, but keeps things a little simpler in terms of not having to pass cards around. It's really simple and streamlined. I think the art looks really nice and stuff. I really, really enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it's great. My number 102 is Zapotec. This is kind of this is a board and dice game. There's kind of the thing is like it kind of gives you all the feels of a big T game, a big civilization game.
Much quicker.
But like 45 minutes. But it's a very cool game again where you're kind of putting your buildings down in these different areas of the board. And it does kind of feel like one of those games, but in a much smaller, quicker package. I actually do like it a lot.
My number 101.
Just missed the list.
The game that just... I feel bad about it. It's abandoned all artichokes. I abandoned it from my top 100 list.
So good.
I'm so sorry. This game is a deck wrecking game where you have 10 artichokes to start. You'll draw out 5 cards, and you're hoping to draw out the end of your turn 5 cards and have no artichokes present. If you do that, you win. You do that by getting all these other different vegetable cards that have different powers. Some of them are kind of take that. Some of them are drafting cards around, and you can do a bunch of things to compost, aka trashing, as many artichokes as possible to have a better chance of drawing out a hand with no artichokes in it. It's just super fun. It's really fun, great, cute art. And does a lot of cool stuff in a pretty quick amount of time. Yeah. Plus, it comes in an artichoke-shaped tin. I don't like game tins, but I do like that one.
I like that one a lot. My number 101, just missed list, is Dice Miner. Mike talked about it earlier. This is a game where you are mining a mountain full of dice, and you are trying to do set collection depending on what the different kinds of dice are. And it's a really fun game. I really do specifically like it. I like it at all player counts, but at 2, the game does not scale, which means at 2 player, you just get like twice the amount of dice, and you get like crazy scores.
Yeah.
And it's just so much fun. Dice Miner, I think, is one of the best filler games out there. It's got cool dice, easy to teach. It just works. I absolutely love it, and it's my number 101.
There you go. So those are all the games that just missed out on being in our top 100 of all time. Pippin, can you hop up here?
Pippin.
Hop up.
Oh, look at it.
Pippin, what do you think of our list?
This is who we've been petting down here.
He's speechless about it. Those are the games that just missed our top 100 and stuff. These are still games that to us we have enjoyed for a long time. They are by no means bad games. we just have 100 games we like a little bit more. Yeah. So, like we said, we want to give a big shout out to all of our patrons for being here first and stuff and helping support this extra content that we make for all of our top 10s that we do, or in this case, our top 100.
Yeah.
If you're not a patron, we are doing our 200 to 300 games in a very similar fashion to the way we just did this right here. So become a patron today to get that. It only takes $1 to do it.
Only takes $1. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah.
Mary says thank you.
Mary says thank you. Those are our dogs and stuff. We will catch y'all in the next one. I'm Mike.
I'm Nick.
We are the Brothers Murph, and we'll see y'all real soon.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for watching that 200 to 101. Man, what a journey. That was a lot of games to talk about and ultimately not that long of a time. Make sure to check out our channel sponsors, Restoration Games, Lucky Duck Games, and Board Game Geek. We want to give a big shout out to our month of December sponsor, the Supreme Padishah Emperor of the Known Universe, Greg White. Thank you so much, Greg White, for using, you are the emperor of the known universe, and I assume created the universe. So I assume you have a lot of money, and so I do appreciate you spending some of that money to sponsor us for the month of December. We really appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, everybody. Goodbye.